your life is on the line and you know that you're on an oxygen tank and they're going to put two in your head, see what you do. Because the bottom line is that me, I'm one person. I can never miss.
Guy's not being loyal to you. How could you be loyal to him? Yeah. And whether you're your father or not. So, but it's always been hard because it was my father.
The word came down, this guy had to go. We didn't know nothing about him until the last minute. And I liked him. I liked Bill. He was a nice guy, but...
Welcome to the show.
While researching a story on John A. Jr. Gotti, the son of the former Dapper Teflon Don, currently known as the imprisoned for life Don journalist Howard Bloom asked his interviewees to reach out to the Bull, "I'd like to talk to him." Blum's wish came true and he was soon contacted by Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano. In a late-night phone call, Gravano told Bloom that he was forced out of the witness protection program by a woman who was stalking him after she learned his true identity while living in Colorado. Bloom and Gravano arranged a meeting in a restaurant, someplace west of the Mississippi. During the interview, Gravano did his usual crying on the shoulder routine, stating, "Sometimes I question how I got to be the way I am. I had a great mother and father. I don't know how I got to be the way I am. No emotion. No feeling. Like fucking ice." Gravano talked freely about the murders he committed. There has always been some confusion regarding Gravano's role in the 19 murders he admitted to. Based on his confessions, he pulled the trigger in only one of those killings. While not to diminish his role in the deaths of those individuals, Gravano is not a serial killer as his detractors have labeled him. Gravano acted as the wheelman in some murders and was at the scene in several others. In one killing, he was merely involved in the discussion of it. Perhaps his own ego led people to believe he played a larger role. He told Bloom, "I never killed in a fit of anger. I am controlled. A professional. I killed because of my oath." These don't seem like the words of a man who had done the actual dirty work in only one murder. But that seems to be the pattern Gravano followed, saying and letting people believe one thing, while in reality doing just the opposite. Gravano would have everyone believe that he was being a dedicated soldier in a society that had honor at the center of it. He did his job, whether he liked it or not, because those were the rules of his society, the society called La Cosa Nostra, which many still refer to as the Mafia. In 1997, Underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano's story of life in the Mafia was published. Peter Moss wrote the book with Gravano's help. Gravano is given a golden opportunity to describe his life in the terms he chooses. What the reader needs to understand is that nowhere in the book is Gravano's word challenged. He is allowed to present his own opinions on all the people he dealt with, on both sides of the law. Only Gravano's side of every issue and every murder is discussed. One of the recurring themes in the book is Gravano crying, "What could I do?" Gravano allows his young brother-in-law to be murdered and all that's left to be buried is a hand. Gravano responds, "What else could I do?" He talks about how heartbroken he was when his parents had to sell the home they loved to help out his sister while Sammy has plenty of money. "So what can I do?" he pleads. When ordered to kill a Philadelphia mobster, Gravano spends several hours with the man and learns to respect him. He then orders a subordinate to shoot him in the back of the head. "There was nothing else I could do," claims Gravano in justifying his action. Even when the wife of one of his crew members seeks Gravano's help because of her husband's drug problems, Sammy responds by having the man murdered. "But there's nothing I can do about it. This was the life." However, when Gravano finds himself cornered and facing trial and a long prison sentence, the honor, the respect and the oath he took as a made member of La Cosa Nostra suddenly becomes secondary to what's best for Sammy. Gravano quickly figures out the answer to what could I do. Bensonhurst Memories. Salvatore Gravano was born on March 12, 1945, the son of Caterina and Giorlando Kay and Jerry, both from Sicily. Kay arrived in America in a quite conventional way, being brought here when she was a baby. Jerry jumped ship in Canada and entered the United States as an illegal alien. However, that appears to be the extent of his criminal actions. Salvatore was the last of 5 children born to the couple. Only 2 sisters would survive childhood. While still a young boy, the family dropped the name Salvatore and opted for Sammy because the child reminded them of an uncle with the same name. The Gravano family resided on 78th Street in the Bensonhurst section of Brooklyn, New York. Both parents worked. Kay was a talented seamstress and Jerry painted houses. Gravano's father contracted lead poisoning and was forced out of painting. He went to work with Kay in a dress factory financed for the pair by a Jewish clothing manufacturer. Gravano attended PS 186 in Brooklyn. At an early age he was dyslexic, for which at the time, public schools could offer no help. Struggling with assignments, and adjudged a slow learner due to the disorder, Gravano was held back a grade before the age of 10. The experience turned into a humiliating one for him, and he recalled years later that it would bring about his first dislike of authority. It also brought about his introduction to violence, as he would beat up anyone who made fun of him. It was this propensity to start swinging at people who offended him that earned Gravano his nickname. He received a new bicycle for his 10th birthday. Due to his carelessness, it was stolen. A few weeks later he discovered it in the possession of 2 older and bigger teenagers. The fact that he was outnumbered and outsized meant nothing to the aggressive Gravano, and fists started flying. A few of the local wise guys, who frequented a nearby watering hole, came over and broke up the free-for-all. After settling Gravano down, and ordering the older boys away, one of the wise guys commented, "Did you see Sammy? He's like a little bull." From that incident the legendary nickname of Sammy the Bull was bestowed upon him. One day a couple of beefy men showed up at his parents' dress shop on 15th Avenue. Kay and Jerry hired non-union workers at their small factory. Jerry was told that if he wanted to continue operating without union employees he would have to start making payoffs. Gravano, 13 years old, witnessed the encounter and seethed in anger. His father calmed him down and informed his son that he would take the matter up with Mr. Zuvito, a frail old man with mob connections in the neighborhood. Gravano, dumbfounded that this aging diminutive figure could accomplish anything, hedged this bet by borrowing a gun from a fellow member of his street gang, the Rampers. When the 2 thugs returned, instead of collecting money, they were handing out apologies and asking Jerry to make sure Zuvito was made aware of how sorry they were. Gravano learned the power and respect that connected men received. Gravano continued to struggle with his schoolwork, and in junior high he was held back for a second time. With his dislike of authority intensifying, there were at least 2 incidents of him striking school officials. In one he broke a man's jaw. In addition, Gravano was spending more time with the Rampers and less time in school. His heroes were the well-dressed wise guys who hung around the street corners telling stories or were in the company of beautiful women. Gravano began high school at New Utrecht, but before long he was placed in a special school for incorrigibles. On his second day in the new system, a Bible-toting classmate called him the devil. Gravano responded by punching out the boy, which resulted in his official schooling coming to an end just short of his 16th birthday. Free to run full-time with his gang, Gravano soon had a new authority figure to despise: the New York City Police Department. Gravano took up boxing and began to train in a local gym. When several of his trainers suggested that he join the police athletic league in order to fight his way into contention for the Golden Gloves, Gravano refused, declaring, "I wasn't fighting for no cops." In describing his days with the Rampers in the book Underboss, by Peter Moss, who also authored the best-selling books Serpico and the Valachi Papers, both turned into movies, Gravano claims, "We did mostly burglaries and stealing cars. We did cars for their parts or to be shipped out of the country. We never burglarized homes. That was against what we wanted to do. It was all commercial places. We'd break in at night, robbing clothing stores, hardware stores, stuff like that. We'd hold up jewelry stores, with ski masks on. They all had insurance." Gravano also got used to carrying a gun. In the early 1960s, in a bar on 79th Street, he and other Rampers got into a shootout with members of Crazy Joe Gallo's gang. 2 men were wounded in the shooting. Afterward, a sit-down was required between members of the Gambino and Profassi families to straighten out the matter. Not long after the shootout, Gravano was arrested for assaulting a police officer. Through the wangling of his attorney, Gravano got off with just a $500 fine. The cocky Gravano rubbed the judgment in the officer's face. However, in his next scrape with the law, a bungled burglary, Gravano found himself handcuffed to a pipefitting at the station house, where he was pummeled to a bloody pulp by New York's finest. When the case came to trial, Gravano's lawyer told the judge his client would prefer to enlist in the army than serve jail time. When Gravano told his attorney he had no intention of joining the army, the lawyer replied, "You don't have to. I said that to get you off." Much to his dismay, Gravano was soon drafted. In 1964, the Bensonhurst tough took his physical, was sworn in and shipped off to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. The regimentation of basic training didn't bother Gravano, neither did working KP kitchen patrol. After basic training he was sent to Indiana where he got his first real taste of running a gambling and loansharking operation while collecting a monthly check from the government. Gravano and his money-making operations were transferred to Fort Meade, Maryland, where he served as a bodyguard for a major. While there, Gravano's 2-year hitch was up and he received an honorable discharge. He would later tell Peter Moss, "I wouldn't have minded going to Vietnam. You get medals for killing people there." Career choices. Returning to Brooklyn, Gravano found that his parents had retired and moved to their cottage on Long Island. Renting a small apartment in Bensonhurst, Gravano had to decide whether to marry his longtime girlfriend and settle down, or take the next step with his street gang. While considering his decision, he was nearly killed one night after stealing a car with a ramper pal. The two gang members had stolen the car to perform a robbery. The owner saw the pair and gave chase with some friends in another vehicle. The victimized owner fired a rifle shot at the would-be auto thieves. The bullet ripped through the back of the passenger side seat, severely wounding Gravano's companion. The next shot tore a chunk out of Gravano's skull, above and behind his right ear. Although Gravano crashed the car, he and his partner in crime got away. The accomplice lost his spleen due to the wound. While recovering from the shooting, Gravano actually learned a legitimate trade: how to cut hair. Not surprisingly, it was part of a scam. Gravano, as an ex-soldier, was entitled to learn a trade at the government's expense. His employer was well aware of this and collected the money while Gravano came and went as he pleased, sampling the many women who attended the predominantly female classes. With the help of his sister, Franny, Gravano passed the state board exam. At the age of 23, Gravano was ready to graduate from the Rampers and move on to the next phase of his criminal career. He realized that to be successful in this next step he needed to be connected to the right people. In 1968, the door opened for Gravano to move into organized crime. Tommy Sparrow, a fellow ramper, told Gravano his uncle had heard of his reputation and was anxious to meet him. The uncle, of the same name, was a mid-level member of the Colombo crime family. Gravano accepted the invitation. Thomas Shorty Sparrow had a brief speech for Gravano. "I've had my eye on you. Why not come with me? You're a tough guy, but you can't keep doing things your own way. You can't live your whole life on your own. Sooner or later, you're going to get in real trouble or get killed. I'll give you a different relationship, where you can be somebody." Gravano needed no further sales pitch. He readily accepted Sparrow's proposal. He was then introduced to Shorty's capo, Carmen the Snake Persico Jr., the future boss of the Colombo family, who gave Gravano a warm welcome. Ironically, Gravano had already met the family boss, Joseph Colombo, sometime earlier. In Underboss, Gravano describes the incident. "I beat up both his sons one time. In a movie house. We had this argument and I got in a fight with Joseph Jr., who was younger than me, and I broke his ass. He went and got his big brother, Anthony, who comes and it's the same result. I'll never forget it. Joe Colombo sent for me, he called me down. He looks at me and says, 'You beat up both my sons? You must be pretty tough. Did you know they were my sons?' By being merciful and not giving the brothers a savage beating, Gravano had avoided Colombo's wrath. When Joe Colombo started his crusade against the FBI, which culminated in the formation of the Italian-American Civil Rights Defense League, Gravano spent time on the picket line in front of the government's New York office. Gravano was welcomed into the family by Colombo and was assigned to Shorty Sparrow's crew. One of the first incidents he was involved in was a robbery at a clothing store, after which a witness identified him from a mugshot. He was arrested and charged with a felony. When it turned out that the store owner was a friend of a member of New Jersey's DeCavalcanti family, the witness was persuaded not to identify Gravano in court and the case was dismissed. This was followed by a similar incident in which Gravano was identified after a bank robbery attempt. This time a bank guard, who happened to know Carmen Persico's cousin, decided that for $10,000 he could develop a faulty memory. Persico paid off the bribe, but Gravano was saddled with paying back the capo $300 a week plus interest. The next bout of trouble Gravano found himself in was inside the family. Gravano bought into an after-hours joint on 17th Avenue and 62nd Street. Gravano, who had accumulated some construction experience over the years, helped finish the club and spent a lot of time there making sure things operated smoothly. However, one of the part owners was Matty Gambino, a nephew of the revered Carlo Gambino. Matty liked to play the role of gangster and throw his weight around but did little in the way of actual work at the club. One night after coming in, Matty suggested to Gravano that the money count didn't seem right. Gravano flew into a rage, insulting Matty Gambino, calling him a fucking greaseball, and threatening to knock his head in if the conversation continued. After a sit-down between Colombo and Gambino hierarchy, Gravano was cleared. Gravano opened a club of his own in Bensonhurst and started a loansharking business around the same time. Part of the money Gravano earned from the operations was kicked up to the family higher-ups who looked out for him. In addition, money was also paid to the police to look the other way. Still, Gravano claims he was pulling in $2,000 a week. But this was just a taste of the money that could be made, and Gravano wanted more. Making his bones, Gravano received his first murder assignment in early 1970. Joseph Colucci was a member of Shorty Sparrow's crew. Gravano had heard the mob gossip that Tommy Sparrow was having an affair with Colucci's attractive wife but thought nothing of it. The way Gravano explained the turn of events was that he was told Colucci was gunning for him. The reason for this, as explained to Gravano, was that after Colucci killed both him and Shorty, he could then seek revenge on Tommy without having to worry about retaliation. Colucci's mistake in this twisted plot was taking into confidence another member of the crew who quickly ratted him out. Using the man Colucci had confided in, Gravano and Tommy Sparrow planned the murder. After a night of drinking and dancing at the local clubs, Colucci was lulled into a false sense of security. After leaving a diner around 4 a.m., the four men piled into an automobile. While a Beatles tune filled the air, Gravano performed his first hit for the mob. In Underboss, he describes the murder. As that Beatles song played, I became a killer. Joe Colucci was going to die. I was going to kill him because he was plotting to kill me. I felt the rage inside me. You fucking cocksucker, I thought. Even if I wasn't directly behind him, I felt invisible. I pointed the gun at the back of his head. Everything went in slow motion. I could almost feel the bullet leaving the gun and entering his skull. It was strange. I didn't hear the first shot. I didn't see any blood. His head didn't seem to move, like it was a blank instead of a real bullet. I knew I couldn't have missed. The gun was only inches from his head, but I felt like I was a million miles away, like this was all a dream. I shot a second time in the same spot. This time everything was different. I saw the flash. I smelt the gunpowder. The noise was deafening. Now I saw his head jerk back, his body convulse and slip sideways. I saw the blood. Joe Colucci was dead. He looked like he was sleeping. He looked peaceful. You going to blow me away now? I thought. Although the other occupants were in on the plot, bedlam seemed to fill the car. Driving to a secluded area to dump the body, Tommy Sparrow, who was behind the wheel, told Gravano he was unable to touch the body of his old friend. Gravano climbed out of the back seat, pulled Colucci's body out of the car, and left it face down in the street. He got back in the car, rolled down the window and fired 3 more shots into the body. Again in Underboss, Gravano reveals his thoughts about the murder. We were all scared, not like afraid, but excited. But then I felt a surge of power. I realized that I had taken a human life, that I had the power over life and death. I was a predator. I was an animal. I was Cosa Nostra. That afternoon I was hanging out on a street corner, listening as everybody around was talking about Joe Colucci being hit and who would want to kill him. I felt like I was in space as I listened. Like I wasn't there. I was thinking, am I supposed to feel remorse? If anything, I felt good. Like high. Like powerful. Maybe even superhuman. It's not that I was happy or proud of myself. Not that. I am still not happy about that feeling. It's just that killing came so easy to me. A short time after the killing, Gravano and Tommy Sparrow were called to a hotel room in Midtown Manhattan. Here Tommy described the murder to the hierarchy of the Colombo family: Carmen Jr. Persico, Gennaro Jerry Lang Langella, Salvatore Albanese, Ali Boy Persico, Hugh Apples McIntosh and Shorty Sparrow. Afterward Shorty told Gravano that Persico said they had done a good job. Junior loves you, Sparrow told him. He's real proud of you. Sometime after the trio of killers grieved at Colucci's funeral, Tommy Sparrow married the widow. Gravano reveals with a bitter tone, it didn't last long. She saw him for what he was, a total nothing, and left him for another guy. Later, He was whining at some meeting and I heard Jerry Lang slapped him in the face. That's the worst insult you could have. He didn't have no standing after that. They told me he ended up half a junkie. Glued to the mob. Although Gravano had already carried out his first hit for the mob, his decision to continue a life in organized crime had not yet been cemented. In April 1971, Gravano married 17-year-old Debra Scibetta. Gravano was 26. After a honeymoon in the Pocono Mountains, it was back to business. A former Ramper sidekick, Louis Milito, introduced Gravano to Michael Hardy and Ali Boy Cuomo. Hardy was a drug dealer and would set up buys only to have Gravano and Cuomo bust in at the last moment pretending to be detectives. The drug dealers would be handcuffed and Cuomo and Gravano would take any money the men had while Hardy grabbed the drugs. With Tommy Sparrow, Gravano opened a store he called the Hole in the Wall. He supplied it with merchandise described as slightly damaged, which regular department stores would not purchase for resale. Initially, while trying to sell the goods out of a car trunk, they had little success. Then Tommy Sparrow came up with the idea to tell potential customers that the merchandise was hot. Gravano claimed, people thought they were making a big score, getting stolen stuff. Tommy's father, Ralph Sparrow, wanted in on the new enterprise, but soon afterward Gravano realized he was robbing us blind. The incident led to tension between the Sparrow family and Gravano. Despite selling his interest in the store, problems continued between Gravano and Ralph Sparrow, culminating in Shorty Sparrow, Ralph's brother, giving Sammy an official release from the Colombo family after confirming that the Gambino family would take him in. Later, both Shorty Sparrow and his brother Ralph would become mob murder victims. After his transfer to the Gambino family, Gravano became a member of a crew headed by Salvatore Toto Orello, a family capo whose ties went back to the days of Albert Anastasia. Orello took Gravano under his wing and taught him many valuable lessons about dealing with people. Orello became Gravano's mob mentor and a father figure. During the early 1970s, Gravano saw the movie The Godfather. He claimed, "It was a validation of everything I believed in. It was basically the way I saw the life." Despite his new affiliation and revelation, Gravano was now married and his family obligation, and his first child led him to tell Orello that he was packing it in. He was going to start a legitimate life out on Long Island. Gravano began a concerted effort at a law-abiding career in the construction business, working with members of his wife's family. Gravano claims that he was spending as much as 9 or 10 hours a day on jobs. In spite of the long hours and hard work, he and his wife were still living in Debra's sister's apartment, sleeping on a mattress in one of the bedrooms with their new daughter, Karen. Gravano didn't mind putting in the long hours. In fact, he was toying with the idea of opening his own construction firm. However, a telephone call was about to change his career path. New York Assistant District Attorney Eugene Gold had recently requested that a grand jury issue indictments against Gravano and Ali Boy Cuomo for the 1969 murders of two brothers, Arthur and Joseph Dunn. Although the two had not been involved in the killings, their old partner in crime, Michael Hardy, had offered the two up in an effort to get even with several members of the Colombo family with which he had been at odds. Gravano and Cuomo fled to Florida, but returned after determining, "We didn't kill nobody." They turned themselves in and were placed in the Brooklyn House of Detention. Joining them was Gravano's old friend Louis Milito. Gold, the prosecutor, was out to get Colombo family capo Dominic Mimi Sciallo, who had once killed a close friend of Gravano while he was with the Rampers. Gold told Gravano that if he rolled on Sciallo he would get a total walk. Despite the fact he despised Sciallo, Gravano was not about to become a rat yet. Gravano's greatest fear, along with Cuomo and Milito's, was that Sciallo would kill the three of them in order to face the indictment alone. While still in jail, they made a pact to kill Sciallo themselves. Once the trio made bail, they found out the Colombo family had killed that Sciallo because he was deep into drugs. Despite this, Gravano and Cuomo were still facing trial for the double murder of the Dunn brothers and the legal expenses were mounting. Gravano quit his construction job and said, "Me and Ali went on a robbing rampage for a year and a half, stealing anything that wasn't nailed down. I am out every single night, 7 days a week, robbing and stealing with Ali Boy, just to pay their lawyers." 1 week after the trial began, the Brooklyn prosecutor's office moved to dismiss the charges against Gravano, Cuomo and Milito. Although he was acquitted, Gravano claims the experience sealed his future in a life of crime. In Underboss he reveals, "That pinch changed my whole life. I never, ever stopped a second from there on in. I was like a madman. Never stopped stealing. Never stopped robbing. I was obsessed. Gravano's mafia mentor, Toto Orello, soon proposed Sammy the Bull for membership into the Gambino family. Being made Salvatore Albanese, a capo in the Colombo family, was the first to tip Gravano off to the fact he was going to become a made member of La Cosa Nostra. Confirmed by Orello, the man who had proposed him, Gravano was told to show up at a Bensonhurst residence and to dress up. In mob folklore, the mythical membership books were said to have been closed since 1957. Reopened in 1975, crime families around the country were free to initiate new members. Where once membership was strictly Sicilian, over the years it was extended to anyone who was born of Italian parents. Later it was reduced to just having a father of Italian birth. Gravano doesn't reveal how many new members were made that day, only that when he arrived, there was a bunch of other guys waiting. The men were taken one at a time down to the basement to be made. Taking a seat next to Paul Castellano, the boss of the Gambino family, the rules of La Cosa Nostra are explained to Gravano. Then the traditional rite of pricking the index finger, the burning of the saint and the kissing on both cheeks of the other members was performed. Castellano then turned to Gravano and told him, "You are a member with us. You're now a friend of ours." The Gambino family boss then outlined some of the rules. He, Castellano, told us that the man we answered to was our captain. He was our direct father. You do everything with him. You check with him, you put everything on record with him. You can't kill unless you get permission. You can't do anything, basically, until you get permission from the family. You don't run to the boss. You go to your captain. That was the protocol. Your captain will go to the administration of the family, which is the boss, the underboss and the consigliere. Gravano claimed, "I bought these all 100,000%. I really felt that I belonged to a brotherhood that had honor and respect." However, later that day while celebrating at Orello's club, Gravano states people who weren't supposed to know he had been made congratulated him. He claims, "We're supposed to be a secret society, and then you get made and everybody and his mother in the neighborhood seems to know." Living by the rules, Nick Chabetta was Gravano's brother-in-law, his wife's younger brother. Once a good kid, Chabetta developed a drinking problem and then got involved in cocaine. Soon he was involved in several mob infractions. First he got into a fight in a nightclub that was owned by a mob associate. This was followed by an altercation with the son of a Gambino family associate in which he had the man arrested afterwards. The final straw came when he insulted the daughter of Giorgi DeCicco, the uncle of respected Gambino family member Frank DeCicco. At this point, Gravano slapped his brother-in-law around. While Sammy tried to figure out a solution to the situation, word came down from Castellano that Nick Chabetta was to be hit. The order was given to Frank DeCicco with instructions not to inform Gravano. After DeCicco met with Milito and Joe, Stymie, D'Angelo, who Gravano described as his Luca Brasi, Don Corleone's enforcer in The Godfather, they decided it was wrong not to tell Gravano. DeCicco received Castellano's permission to tell Gravano, but was told in no uncertain terms that if Gravano opposed the murder he was to be killed on the spot. When Gravano was told about the ordered hit, he was livid. Paul. "I'll take Paul out first," he told DeCicco. Gravano looked upon DeCicco as an older brother in the mob. 12 years his senior, DeCicco was one of the few members who had the respect of both the Castellano and Delaros factions of the family. The diplomatic DeCicco sat Gravano down to discuss the situation. "You go to war with Paul and you're a dead man, guaranteed. Louis and Stymie will be killed. Stymie, for sure, if he goes with you, which he will. And in the end, your brother-in-law will still die anyway. So what good would it do?" In Underboss, Gravano the obedient soldier claims, "I chose against Nicky. I took an oath that Cosa Nostra came before everything." Understanding Castellano prior to family patriarch Carlo Gambino's death in October 1976, he tried to steer the family in a new direction. Author Peter Moss explains, although the mob members would never abandon such standbys as loan sharking, illegal gambling, hijackings and narcotics trafficking, Gambino favored a more sophisticated effort to dominate the construction industry, trucking, food distribution, garbage disposal, even to infiltrate Wall Street. Castellano subscribed to this way of thinking, preferring to focus his attention on these activities while allowing his underboss, Delaros, to oversee the interests that involved the traditional muscle end of the family. But in doing so, Castellano lost the respect of family members who were in the strong-arm factions. Gravano opened the Bus Stop, a new after-hours club in Bensonhurst. One night a group of bikers came in and told Gravano they were taking over. In an ensuing fight, Gravano broke his ankle and the bikers were chased off. Gravano, following protocol, went to Castellano and received permission to murder the leader of the biker gang. While still in an ankle cast, Gravano and Milito hunted down the leader, wounding him and killing another member of the gang. When Gravano reported back to Castellano what had transpired, the businessman like Don was flabbergasted that Gravano participated in the hit himself while still on crutches. Castellano contacted Gravano's capo Aurelio to inquire as to why Gravano hadn't assigned the hit to members of his crew. Aurelio told the boss, "What can I tell you? He's got the balls of a fucking elephant." While Castellano may have been more appalled than impressed with Gravano's cowboy actions, their relation was about to change. Gravano went into the plumbing and drywall business with his sister's husband, Edward Garofalo. Castellano soon sent for Gravano to fix a problem he had with water pressure at his mansion in Staten Island, which his mob associates dubbed the White House. The construction business is something Castellano understood and he used his union connections to help Gravano's new company. Paul just loved construction, Gravano related in his book. That was his true pet, the construction industry. As Gravano's involvement in the construction field increased, he became an intimate at Castellano's White House, meeting with his inner circle. Business as usual under Castellano's guidance, Gravano was finally making big money. He opened another after-hours club and began operating the Plaza Suite, a popular disco in the Gravesend section of Brooklyn, which Gravano made his construction headquarters. He was making $4,000 a week from the disco alone. Gravano purchased a 30-acre farm for his family in rural New Jersey. He claimed, "For me, that farm was the highlight of my life. It was a retreat from the mob." He soon purchased trotting horses and hired a trainer to prepare them for racing at tracks in Freehold and the Meadowlands. Gravano was finally able to provide for his family in the manner he had always dreamed. However, it would be his other family that would keep him from enjoying the fruits of his labor. In Philadelphia, the local mafia don, Angelo Bruno, had run a relatively peaceful operation for nearly 20 years. Along the way he earned the nickname the Docile Don. When he was murdered in March 1980, it created a power struggle for control of the family. When the commission ruled in favor of Nicodemo Little Nicky Scarfo, the loser was John Johnny Keys Simone, a cousin of Bruno. Gravano was dispatched by Castellano to murder Simone. The killing took on a bizarre twist for Gravano, who held 2 meetings with Simone, gaining his confidence to set him up to be hit. Using Milito and D'Angelo, he trapped Simone at a country club outside Trenton, New Jersey and dragged him into a van in the club's parking lot. On the way to a wooded area where they were going to kill Simone, the victim displayed a remarkable calmness that caused Gravano to refer to him as a Monsman. During the long hours spent in the van between the abduction and the execution, Simone relayed to Gravano how the greed and treachery of the Genovese family in New York had led to the bloody war in the Philadelphia family. Before the van arrived at the designated area, Simone told Gravano that he had made a promise to his wife that he would die with his shoes off. He also requested that a made member of the group kill him. Arriving in a wooded area of Staten Island, the van came to a stop and Gravano removed Simone's shoes. "I'll walk out on my own," Simone said. "Let me die like a man." Simone took several steps away from the van. He stopped and lowered his head. Per his request, Gravano had Milito, a made man, shoot him in the back of the head. The following day Gravano claims he met Castellano at the Tote Hill mansion and reported what happened. Gravano says Castellano smiled and put his arm around my shoulder. He said he was proud of Sammy the Bull. More Bloodshed. Gravano's Plaza Suite discotheque was doing a booming business in the early 1980s. On weekends patrons stood in long lines waiting up to an hour at times before they could gain admittance. On the ground floor of the club, Gravano had his construction headquarters, which included his private office and one for his brother-in-law, Edward Garofalo. Gravano despised Garofalo and took several potshots at him in his book. He never considered killing him because of Garofalo's marriage to his older sister. In 1982, Frank Fiala, described as a multimillionaire cocaine dealer whose legitimate business was manufacturing marine parts and supplies, wanted to rent Gravano's club for one night for $40,000 to throw himself a birthday party. 2 days after the party, Fiala offered Gravano $1 million for the Plaza Suite, which Sammy had valued at about $200,000. The deal called for a $100,000 check up front, $650,000 to be paid in cash under the table, and another check for $250,000 when the deal closed. Before the transaction was completed, Fiala began to act as if he had already purchased the club. He brought people in to begin remodeling the place and he hired his own bouncers. All of this irritated Gravano, but the last straw came when Fiala moved into Sammy's private office and began breaking through an office wall. Gravano, enraged, stormed into the office followed by Garofalo. Fiala was standing behind Gravano's desk. He sat down in Sammy's chair smirking at the two men. "What do you think you're doing?" Gravano growled. "This doesn't belong to you till the closing. Get the hell out of here." Fiala reached into a desk drawer, removed an Uzi and aimed it at the two. Ordering the pair to sit down, the brazen, yet foolish, Fiala stated, "You fucking greaseballs, you do things my way." The second Gravano realized he was not going to be shot. He began to plot Fiala's demise. As he and Garofalo left the building, he ordered his brother-in-law to round up the boys. The following night, an ambush was set up outside the Plaza Suite. As Fiala, in the midst of a cluster of people, approached a narrow alley beside the club, Garofalo called out to him. Fiala spun around to see who was speaking to him. He saw Gravano. Fiala had a surprised expression on his face as Gravano said, "Hey, Frank, how you doing?" With that, Louis Milito ran into the alley and shot Fiala in the head. After Fiala fell to the pavement, Milito stood over his body and fired 2 more bullets, one into each eye. While people were screaming and running in all directions, Gravano walked over to Fiala's body and spit on it. While Gravano had extracted his revenge, he was faced with 2 problems. First, the wrath of Castellano for killing without the boss' permission, and second, the ensuing investigation would delve into the ownership of the Plaza Suite. Gravano laid low for almost 3 weeks until Frank DeChico informed him that Castellano wanted to see him in Milito. Gravano had already called his crew together and made the decision that if they had to, they would kill Castellano. By the time the meeting was held in a Manhattan restaurant, Castellano had been given the details of what Fiala had done. He was still miffed that Gravano had not come to him first. Gravano prepared a story for Castellano claiming he didn't come to him because he wanted to protect the boss in case something went wrong with the hit. Castellano bought Gravano's explanation, which saved Sammy from a certain execution. Gravano didn't fare as well when the Internal Revenue Service got involved in the ongoing murder investigation. The incident, due to the publicity, forced Gravano to sell his farm, and then he was indicted for allegedly trying to bilk the government out of the taxes from the sale of the Plaza Suite. When the case came to trial, noted defense attorney Gerald Shargel represented Gravano. Despite the fact that Shargel thought Gravano would be found guilty on at least some of the charges, the jury acquitted him. The acquittal brought Gravano little joy, as he had just found out his right-hand man, Joe Stymie D'Angelo, had been murdered by a Colombo associate who was out celebrating that he was about to be proposed for membership. D'Angelo's killer met his fate at the hands of the Colombo family.
If you guys like that, there's a lot more. Got a ton of content that I'm going to be bringing you guys. Make sure you guys hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. I appreciate every single one of you. And remember, don't be a bitch. This is part 1. Part 2 will be out later in the week, and it gets juicy.